is a character in here, and they say his magic is that he can turn into shadows. And I realized that his eyes are more vivid than mere rust. They're more like angry sunsets and rebellious autumn leaves, like the same smoldering flames that color his voice. Beautiful, brilliant things, but also things that herald destruction. He says that when she got her magic, it felt like she lost a piece of her soul. Oh my gosh, I don't even have words right now. Hi, I'm Ashley, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a reading vlog for a book that I am very excited for. And it is a YA fantasy book that just came out on February 4th. And it is The Beast We Bury by D.L. Taylor. So this is one of my most anticipated YA fantasy books for this year. And is a romantic YA fantasy with dual perspectives. So our main female character, she is heir to the throne, and she has the power where she can summon animals, but only if she kills them with her bare hands first. So that's already very intriguing, because it sounds cool that she'd be able to summon animals, but it sounds like her power has a very dark side to it. And then our main male character is a thief, and he is hired to go steal something from the king's castle. And the king is our main female character's father. So I'm very intrigued to see how this story plays out. So without further ado, I'm going to hop right into reading this, and I will be back in a little bit with my first thoughts and to tell you a little bit more about this book. Okay, chapter 1 was really sad. So I'm on page 47, chapter 3, and I just had to share something. It's just like a small little detail, but there is a character in here, and they say his magic is that he can turn into shadows, and that just immediately made me think of Fourth Wing, so I just had to share that. The main character's father is just like an awful human being. Hi, so I am back with a reading update. I have made it to chapter 7, page 103. And so far, I'm happy to say that I am really enjoying this. And so far, it is living up to my expectations. And right from chapter 1, I found myself super intrigued by the stories and the characters and the world building. So chapter 1 is in first-person perspective from our main female character, Mencella's point of view. And we learn that in 15 days, she will be formally announced as her father's heir. And her father is the ruler of the kingdom, but the rulers in this book are called primes. Only those who have magic can rule, and that explains why Mencella is being named as heir over her older sister. Mencella's sister doesn't have magic, but Mencella does. She has the magic to summon animals, but only after she's killed them first with her bare hands. So she has to kill them all by herself. No one can help her. She can't use any weapons. She can only use her hands. And then after she kills them, the spirits of the animals live inside her. And Mencella really abhors her magic because of the nature of it. She hates having to kill all these innocent animals, and she hates how like all their souls are trapped within her. But her father is the one who forces her to use her magic. And when she got her magic, he locked her in a room with an animal and wouldn't let her out until she killed the animal. And she has tried running away, but her father always dragged her back. So now she's pretty much at the point where she has given up resisting him and just does as he says. And she does now have this deal with him where she only has to kill one animal a year, and then he'll let her live the rest of the year in peace. Hi, editing Ashley here, hopping in to make a correction. So in the upcoming clip, I keep referring to the animal that Mencella has to kill in chapter 1 as a panther, but it was actually a jaguar. And I have no idea why my brain mixed up a panther and a jaguar, but I did. I just keep calling it a panther throughout this entire upcoming clip. So I just wanted to hop on here and clarify that. And in this first chapter, her father forces her to kill a panther. And that whole fight scene was really hard-hitting emotionally, and I just felt so bad for Mancella and for the panther, because Mancella, she doesn't want to kill the panther, but she knows that she has no other choice, because either she kills the panther or the panther will die anyways, because her father's guards will kill the panther if she fails. So she's just trying to kill it as quickly and painlessly as possible. And so she does succeed in killing it, and whenever she kills an animal, when the spirit goes into her body, she gets a glimpse into the animal's life. And so Mancella experiences the panther's feelings, and you learn that the panther was fighting so hard because it was a mother and has 2 baby cubs that rely on it. And so chapter 1 just ends off on a very sad and hopeless feeling note. And then chapter 2, we switch to our other main character's point of view, Silver. Silver lost his parents to war when he was very young, so he's an orphan, and him and 2 of his other friends ran away from a place called the Academy. And since they ran away from that place, they are considered runaways. So as runaways, they can't get jobs, because if it is found that they are employed, then they and their employers will be executed. And so as a result, Silver works as a thief as a way to make meats end. And so in chapter 2, he is embarking on a dangerous mission to infiltrate the castle. And this is an almost impossible feat, because he has to scale a very high wall and then also make it through a forest of glass trees. And so his friends try to talk him out of it, but he is determined to do this job, because if he can do this job, then that will mean a better life for him and his friends. And so he does it, and he does make it through those obstacles, and on the other side of those obstacles, he actually comes face to face with his employer who gave him the job. And so he's kind of like, why did you hire me if you could get in here yourself? And the guy is like, well, I had to test you to make sure you could actually do it. And so now his employer gives him a new job, and his new job is that he needs to get the seal of the king. And so in order to do so, Silver ends up working as a servant in the castle. And eventually he ends up meeting Mancella, and he decides that he is going to romance her in order to try to persuade her to give him the seal. And so our story goes from there. And so now for my thoughts. So as I mentioned, I am really enjoying this. I was a little worried at the beginning of chapter 1 just because of how bleak and hopeless the first chapter was in tone. Because personally, I don't like stories that are too dark. I like there to be some sense of hope within the darkness. However, in chapter 2, right from the beginning, there is a shift in perspective and in tone. So my worries about the story being too dark went right away. And so the first 2 chapters, the tone in them is really contrasting, and that reflects our 2 main characters and their current views on life. So right from the beginning, Silver, you get that feeling that, yes, his life is tough, but he still has that spark in him. He still has that hope, that drive that he will make things better and that his life will get better. That is visible right from the very beginning of this book. Just from the first 3 lines, which I'm going to read, you get that feeling from him. So on page 18, it says, "Breaking into the palace is a terrible idea, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. Impossibility is negotiable. Inadvisability depends entirely on execution. And irrationality, it's where I live." And so that first paragraph of chapter 2, I really liked it, and I especially liked the shift in tone, and I could already tell that I was going to love Silver as a character, which I am. That being said, I also really like our main female character, Mancella, as well. And she, in contrast to Silver, she is kind of just resigned to her fate, and she has kind of stopped living life and just surviving. And that is why chapter 1 has such a bleak tone to it, because it is reflecting Mancella's current mindset. And so their 2 different viewpoints collide right from the very beginning, right from the very first interaction. Silver knows that he is speaking to someone that is of a much higher station than him, and that could get him killed. And he actually used to admire her from afar when he was a little boy, but as he grew older, he began to resent her, because he blames the ruling family for the death of his parents and the current state of his life. And so when he is talking to her, he kind of gets worked up, and when she starts telling him her problems, he kind of goes off on her and says, nothing is going to change unless you change it. And then, of course, right after he does that, he's like, oh my gosh, I forgot who I'm talking to. She could have me killed, but she doesn't. She kind of just, like, angrily dismisses him. But his words get under her skin, and it's, like, all she can think about. And so I'm really enjoying their dynamic so far because you can already see that they're already affecting each other for the better. In addition to our main characters and their dynamic, another thing that I'm really enjoying is the writing style of this book. So I wouldn't call it like completely lyrical, but there are times in the book where there are moments of lyrical writing. And I think the fact that the book isn't all lyrical really makes those moments really stand out. And so far, a lot of the instances of the lyrical writing style in here are when our two main characters are describing or thinking about each other. And so I just want to read a couple examples of that. So on page 59, in a chapter from Silver's perspective, he says this about Mancella. He says, I was expecting a glittering monster, but she's just a girl. And so I really like that line. Then another example is on page 83 when Mancella is describing Silver's eyes. And so she says, and I realized that his eyes are more vivid than mere rust. They're more like angry sunsets and rebellious autumn leaves, like the same smoldering flames that color his voice. Beautiful, brilliant things, but also things that herald destruction. I love that description so much. And then another time where the writing, it gets a little lyrical, is when the book is talking about these flowers that are on the cover. And these flowers are called star sprouts, and they're kind of like a symbol of hope in the book. And they have a whole story behind them, and I just love the symbolism of them. Another thing I'm really enjoying in this book so far is the magic system and the world building that goes with it. So right from the very beginning of this book, you get the feeling that the magic in this world is ominous, and that there's something that's not quite right with it. And you can see this through Mancella's magic, which hers is the first that we get to see. And so I'm going to read a line from page 1 that describes Mancella's magic. So it says, just beneath my skin, the animals I've killed before writhe in anger, squirming and thrashing until I feel like an overfilled sack that will rip at the seams any second. So that is the initial introduction that you get to her magic. So right off the bat, the magic comes across as like dark and ominous and disturbing. And it doesn't get any better, because as you read further into this, you learn about like other people's magic, and all of their magic seem to be dark and ominous. As you read on, you learn that magic used to be common in this world, but then because of magic, all these wars started, so then magic disappeared. But then it came back when this mysterious place called the Citadel appeared randomly in a town one day. And so now, if you go into the Citadel, you may get magic powers. And through Mancella, we learn that there's something that isn't quite right with the magic, because she says that when she got her magic, it felt like she lost a piece of her soul. So clearly, the magic in here is not a good thing. So I'm very intrigued about the magic system and want to know more. So I'm on page 290, so I have about 60 pages left, and things have gotten like so intense, like so emotional, like oh my gosh, I don't even have words right now. I'm just like, alright, I'm going to continue reading. Oh, I just feel like this book's making me feel so emotional. Though after that hard-hitting moment, there were some happier moments that made me smile and feel giddy. Huh. The epilogue is interesting. I'm not sure I like the epilogue. But I now see how this is gonna have another book. But I almost feel like we didn't need it. The acknowledgements, though, were beautiful. They made me smile. Hi, so it is a few days later, and I am back for a reading update, which is I have finished The Bee Sweet Berry. I really enjoyed this. I am giving it 4 stars. This is definitely like one of the most hard-hitting, emotionally books that I've read in a long time. This book on a whole, it was just very powerful and very beautiful. And there are just so many scenes in this book that were just so powerful and that really made me feel the emotions that were on the page. Some scenes were so intense that they were a little hard to read at times because they just felt so raw and so real. But just be warned that if you do pick this up, it does deal with the difficult topic of abuse. And Mancella's father in this, he is abusive to Mancella, to her sister, to her mother, to like everyone around him. He's physically abusive, he's emotionally abusive, he's manipulative. So there are some really intense scenes revolving around that. And one scene in here that I found like particularly hard to read and that just was like really intense is when Mancella's father is forcing her to do this certain thing and it's against her will. And that scene is just like so powerful and so raw and I could like feel all the emotions that Mancella was going through. So scenes like that like were really hard hitting in this book and just destroyed me a little bit emotionally. That being said, the story is also very beautiful because a large part of it deals with Mancella realizing that she's had enough, she doesn't want to be in this situation anymore where her father is just manipulating her and controlling her. So she starts to take some steps to hopefully change her life and her situation. The catalyst that gives her the push that she needs to try to get out of her father's control is when she meets Silver, who is the second protagonist of our story and the love interest. And the relationship that blossoms between Silver and Mancella was also very beautifully done and was one of my favorite parts of the book. And so the relationship, it does go towards a romantic relationship, but it is a very slow burn. Because, first of all, Mancella has never ever had a friend before in her life. So first you get to see them become friends. And another really powerful moment in here is when Silver appears to help Mancella in a time of need. She's just kind of in shock and in awe because she has always wished that someone would come and help her when it came to her father, that someone would stand up for her. But no one ever did. Like, her mother always said she would, but she never actually did. And her sister would help her afterwards in the aftermath, but not while it was happening. But Silver actually comes and stands up to her father. And again, that scene was just very emotional and hard-hitting. I thought it was beautifully done. And then on the other side of things, Silver, he does approach Mancella at first with ulterior motives, and he also has like perceived conceptions about her that he has to overcome before he can actually become friends with her. But as he starts to know her, he gets to know the real her and realizes that she is nothing like her father. And then a genuine friendship starts to bloom between the two of them, and eventually that starts to turn towards romance. And the romantic developments happen about in like the last 150 pages of the book. And they're just everything that I love in a romance. You have the yearning, you have the angst, and also you have like that feeling of like a first love that just feels so pure and innocent. And that's just like one of those things that I love when a YA has like just like an innocent and first love romance. And so overall, I just loved their relationship. I thought it was very well done. I loved how they help each other grow. Also, I loved them individually as characters as well. So I thought Mancella and Silver, as characters, they were really well developed. They were layered. They both had things that they had to overcome in this book. And by the end of the book, they definitely grew as characters. So those are some things I just loved about this book. But now you may be asking why I gave it 4 stars and not 5. And the answer is because of 2 things. First, the plot in this book. So there are kind of like two plot lines going on. So the first one has to do with Mancella and her father and how he's abusive and how she's trying to get out of that situation. But then there's also like the secondary plot line going on with Silver and his employer. In the beginning of the book, there's this whole mystery surrounding who Silver's employer is, and you kind of get like the feeling that he is not a good person. And I did guess who he was because there are some hints in the book, and I was right. But how everything was resolved with that plotline, it just happened really fast near the end, and I feel like I would have liked that to be more developed, and I feel like that whole topic could then further delved into. Now, the second reason why this book is not a 5-star read for me is because of the ending of the book and the epilogue. So, towards the end of this book, everything was being wrapped up really fast. And I was getting a little concerned because I knew that this was the first book in a series. So I was like, well, maybe the second book is just going to follow a different character, but take place in the same world. And I was like, oh, maybe it will follow Mancella's sister, because she is a very interesting character and I would like to know more about her. But then you get the epilogue, and I didn't really like the epilogue. It like sets up like the plot for book 2, but I didn't like it. I feel like it didn't like exactly come out of nowhere, but I just feel like it's not super interesting. It's not making me want to like pick up book 2 right away. And I feel like either the book should have been a standalone and just ended the way it did minus the epilogue, and then I probably would have gave this 5 stars if it went that way. Or if it wanted to have a second book, then that secondary plot line with Silver's employer, that should have been the primary focus of the second one, because that I would have been highly interested in. And then this first one could have just tied up the plot line with Mancella's father, but left the second plot line for the next book. And kind of going hand in hand with that, in this first book, the romance is also wrapped up neatly at the end. So Mancella and Silver, like, there is some turmoil in their romance near the end of the book, but then, like, in those final chapters, it resolves all of that. So now there's no more romantic tension. So I feel like that would have been fine if this was just a standalone. Would have been perfect. But since this is not a standalone, I feel like that tension should have been left unresolved, and I feel like it would have played well into the second book and that second plot line. But then again, those are just my personal feelings and thoughts on that matter. And so I will probably pick up the second one, but because of me not loving the epilogue and not really loving the direction that the story seems like it's going to go in, I don't exactly feel like I need to pick it up right away. And that's kind of sad, because when I finish a book in a series, I really want that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I need the second book right now. This book didn't give me that, so it kind of makes me feel like it didn't really need a sequel. However, I will say that one thing that does make me want to pick up the next book is the magic system. So the magic system in this book is very fascinating, because at first glance it seems very whimsical, but then you quickly learn that it has a dark side to it. For example, Mancella can summon animals, which sounds like a lot of fun, but then you learn before she can summon them, she has to kill them with her bare hands, and then it's not fun anymore. Every magic power that we are introduced to has some sort of dark side to it. And then you also learn that once upon a time, magic was commonplace, but then people misused it and had wars, and so it went away. But then one day it came back in the form of this place called the Citadel, where you could go in there and possibly get a magic power. But as Mancella remarks, it seems like all the powers have a dark side to them, and that the magic is twisted, that there's something not quite right with it. And at the beginning of the story, she very much does not like her magic. So it seems like maybe we were going to explore at some point the nature of the magic and why the Citadel just suddenly appeared one day with this twisted seeming magic. But then, like, there's a little bit of a tone shift towards the magic towards the end of the book with Mancella, so now I'm curious to see if the second book, if it will explore the nature of the magic a little bit more. So that's one reason why I will probably end up picking up the second book at some point. But yeah, those are all my thoughts on The Beast We Bury. If you read this, let me know down below in the comments what you thought of it. I'm especially curious to see what other people thought of the epilogue. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!